You shouldn't go into a cemetery alone at night. I say that not as superstition, but as a warning learned the hard way. From files, from witnesses, from places locals whisper about and then cross themselves when they pass the gate. Tonight, I'm taking you through those places. The stones that keep their secrets, the gates that some say swing on their own, and the graves that, once disturbed, never let go. If you plan to stay until the end, do me one favor. Subscribe, ring the bell, and leave a like if this kind of dark curiosity is your thing. There are more stories than we can cover here, and your support keeps the lights on, figuratively at least. Now, let's not linger in the parking lot. The first gate is already creaking. Hollowgate Cemetery, rural New England. The entrance is iron and rust, and an arched warning you can feel more than see. The road narrows into ruts and then stops at a chain-link fence someone wrapped in prayer cloths. Local historians say Hollowgate was seized from a private family in the 1800s after a fever swept through the valley. Graves were dug 3 nights straight to keep up with death, and not everyone was given proper rites. That hurried burial is the kind of detail that greases the hinge of a legend. It began, according to an elderly groundskeeper who declined to be fully named, with photographs. He said that in 2011, a teenager brought a cheap digital camera to the cemetery and took a dozen shots of a family plot. When he developed them, 8 of those photos showed a pale blur hovering over the headstone. It's like a face, the groundskeeper told me, but wrong. Hollow eyes, like the stone itself had breathed. He described the camera's battery dying and the flash failing to fire on the walk back to his truck, reported by him as a pattern in the equipment around that plot. Witnesses have described a cold that slams into the chest, not the kind that comes from wind, but a pressure in the ribs that leaves you shaking for minutes. One couple told investigators they felt pushed from behind near the McAllister tomb, and that both of them woke with long, raised scratches down their backs the next morning. Their medical records list bruising, fainting, and shock. The scratches were photographed and now circulate in online forums as alleged proof. Local emergency dispatch logs, available after a public records request, show multiple calls about disturbances at Hollowgate between 2012 and 2016. Officers reported feeling uneasy and declined to approach the central plot after dusk, a detail noted as officer observation in the summary of a 2014 report. The cemetery's most persistent claim centers on a locked mausoleum called the McAllister Vault. According to town minutes from the 1870s, it was sealed after grave robbers tried to pry open a sarcophagus and found nothing but a child's blanket and a scrap of lace. Over the years, caretakers have bolted the vault, then returned to find the lock shattered and the bolts twisted as if something had pushed from the inside. The town installed security lights and cameras in 2015. Locals say the cameras began to show static or gone black frames only when directed at that vault. A security technician allegedly logged repeated camera outages at the vault between midnight and 3 a.m., though he refused to sign his name to any public statement. If you visit Hollowgate at night, the path will fall away into fog and low-slung trees that whisper like congregations. People have left offerings, coins, small toys, a rosary. Some speak of a lament that sounds like a woman singing to her dead, a song judged by a neighboring farmer to be older than the town. The farmer sealed his own fence when his teenage son went missing for an hour in 2016 after daring friends to cross into the McAllister section. The boy returned covered in mud, barefoot, unable to explain where he had been. Neighbors say they still avoid the lane after dusk. The last note on Hollowgate from the local paper: Town Commission votes to keep vaults sealed, extra patrols on weekends. Whether the patrols help is left to the people who lived to tell the tale. Ashmore Burial Ground sits 3 counties away, in a swamped hollow where willows bend like bent centuries. It began as a pauper's plot. According to property records, in the 1890s, a county workhouse used the Ashmore Marsh as an overflow burial site. Hurried, unmarked graves. Bodies sometimes placed shallow where the ground would reclaim them quickly. The town historian sums it up with a single line: "It was a place people were thrown away." That history is important because the feeling some describe at Ashmore is not just fear, but something that feels like accusation. A group of urban explorers in 2013 claimed to have taken photos of orbs dancing above the shallow graves. One of the explorers, who later ran a modest ghost hunting blog, posted thermal images that he claimed showed pockets of heat moving along the path like living things. He also recorded an EVP, an alleged electronic voice phenomenon where a low voice says, "Not buried right," and a child's cry follows. The recordings have been analyzed and replayed on late-night radio programs. Skeptics point out background noise and pareidolia, while believers insist the cadence is wrong for any known wildlife. Local firefighters told me, off the record, about a call in 2017 when teenagers reported their lighter butane flames extinguishing within inches of the graves. 2 crew members who arrived said their radios lost signal for 10 minutes while they were within the willow line. One later requested a transfer, citing personal reasons. Fire district logs note the call with the terse line, "Youths found upset, no injuries." This same autumn, someone painted the entrance gate with a crude warning: "Do not dig." The paint fades now, but the gate still leans inward as if offering an apology. Ashmore's current status is ambiguous. The county marked it as a protected historic site in a bureaucratic note that did not explain why. Walkers used to pass through, but many now skirt the outer lane. There are rumors that a preservationist group removed a set of headstones in 2018 after allegedly finding markers stacked unnaturally, as if someone had tried to hide them. The group denies this. The county clerk's office has an undated receipt from a contractor for stone relocation, a vague entry that only fans the curiosity. The ambient water, the distant owl hoot, drip as if more terror is trying to speak. Guia de estilo e instruções para a síntese de fala. Você é narrador, palestrante, com voz potente, forte e autoritária. O tom deve ser firme e inabalável. A frase anterior era: Ted, the effect could be caused by a buried pipe. Agora, mantenha o ritmo e a força vocal sem quebrar a conexão. Haja como se estivesse transmitindo uma verdade fundamental. Sem mais, a palavra é. Still, the team also shared a photo of a figure at the edge of a frame. A pale shape, not quite human, with limbs like branches. The photo is grainy and old, and the sort of thing that divides an audience between photo artifact and something else.
Widow's Hollow lies beneath the highway where the city forgot to widen for progress. It began when a smallpox quarantine in the 1860s forced neighbors to hastily bury the dead in a hollow behind the church. Today, shipping containers and development encroach on the remnants. In the 1970s, a construction crew where a new apartment complex later rose reported unexplained tool malfunctions and repeated small fires concentrated near a cluster of unmarked graves. The company logged those incidents as equipment failure and reimbursed the crew. But whispers turned that into a retaliation story. The dead were angry. Multiple witnesses at Widow's Hollow talk about children being the first to notice things. One neighbor, a school crossing guard, said her students refused to use a shortcut through the hollow after claiming they saw a woman in black kneeling among the grass. The woman would vanish if approached. The kids described her dress as wet and stuck to her. The guard mentioned that the children spoke of pulling at their ankles as if something underfoot wanted them to stay. A parent later photographed the hollow and posted the image on a neighborhood forum. In the photo, a small pale smear hovers above the path, shaped vaguely like a hand. The poster captioned it, "What We Saw," and commenters argued until moderators closed the thread. A local mortician who asked that his name not to be used told me that Widow's Hollow has an odd paperwork history. Several death certificates from the quarantine era list ambiguous causes like wasting or fever, and some graves are labeled with numbers rather than names. That anonymity, he suggested, leaves grievances behind. The city placed a chain around the most concentrated cluster after residents complained in 2009. Signs warn visitors to stay away. But teenagers still climb the chain on warm nights, daring one another while someone records with a phone. Those videos sometimes show shadows moving in ways that don't match the people present. At least, that's how the viewers react. Blackwater Rest is different because of the water. The cemetery rims a tidal pool that gathers fog like a mouth collects words. Its oddity began with a drowning scandal in 1958 when a group of rowers returned with one seat empty. The missing man's family plot is half sunk now, water pushing at the lower stones. Fishermen speak of nets snagging on something heavy beneath the mud at night. One angler told a regional paper he felt hands brush his ankles as he leaned over the rail. Authorities investigated but found only silt.
The tidal logs show no anomalies. The fishermen's stories remain anecdotal, but their persistence makes a pattern. At Blackwater, the phenomenon most often reported is light. Multiple visitors describe seeing small lights skittering low over the water at odd hours. Sometimes the orbs follow the shoreline in precise, repeated paths. A marine biologist who grew up in the town suggested bioluminescent algae as an explanation, but several witnesses insist the lights rise and fall too quickly for algae to account for their movement. A credibly sourced photograph circulating in a maritime forum shows a line of lights forming a rough human silhouette above the pool. The image is labeled "reported by commercial fishermen," and while it lacks chain of custody proof, it sailed through local news cycles for a week. There are also stories of electronics failing on the jetty. Boat radios drop to static. GPS devices reorient slowly, as if confused. A retired Coast Guard member said he once watched his compass spin while on patrol near Blackwater's mouth, and that the magnetic anomaly persisted for the 20 minutes he stayed. His official statement is simple: "We lost reliable heading." The Coast Guard later changed patrol timing. The fishermen kept going out, but fewer did so after midnight. The last location I'll mention is the one that keeps even the curious from laughing: Eldersfield.
It sits on the outskirts of a Midwestern town where corn dries and crows gather like black punctuation. Eldersfield carries a story of injustice. In the 1930s, a cholera outbreak led to a hurried mass burial. Rumors add layers: that bodies were buried with personal trinkets intact, that graves were stacked without ceremony, that the dead were never named. What most people here report, though, isn't just seeing or hearing, but losing time. A teacher who conducted a history club visit in 2007 reported that several students could not account for an hour of the afternoon. A chaperone wrote in a complaint to the school board that kids wandered off, their watches stopping, their memories clouded. The district logged the incident as students separated, one disoriented, and the event was later minimized in public statements as misplaced children. But the adults' accounts of the day differ in detail. One says the children came back pale and unable to recall names. Another says they returned laughing, as if awakened from a long sleep. Those conflicting reactions are part of what makes Eldersfield so unnerving. The experience refuses a single narrative. Strangely, Eldersfield produces a physical mark on some who visit, a rash-like redness, not bleeding, that appears along where clothing clings. A nurse I interviewed confirmed she had treated 2 such cases and described the affected skin as irritated and cold to the touch. The medical charts list contact dermatitis and recommend standard ointments.
Locals call it the holding and warn first-timers to wear long sleeves and carry prayer cards, talismans, or nonsense trinkets to feel safer. Whether the rash is psychosomatic or something else, people who experienced it describe the sensation as being observed in a way that prickles. Across these places, a pattern emerges. It's not a single signature, but a chorus. Cameras fail, lights behave like eyes, witnesses feel weight or pressure. Officials mark the incidents in logs with neutral language that belies the unease in the margins. Some sites have official interventions, locked gates, patrols, or memorial boards, while others are left to be whispered about on night forums and around kitchen tables. The evidence is uneven. Photographs, police logs described as reported, EMT notes, and the persistent testimony of people who felt something insist they were not imagining it. I do not claim proof. What I do claim is this: enough credible people have reported enough similar phenomena that dismissing every story as pranks or artifacts feels shallow. Investigators with meters and thermals chase signals, and sometimes those instruments record anomalies. Other times, the items fail in unhelpful ways. Batteries die, screens blank, compasses spin. That inconsistency is part of the mystery, not a neat explanation. It leaves the question open. What exactly are these cemeteries holding on to? If you choose to visit any of these places, and some of you will, no doubt, go with eyes open and respect intact. Do not dig. Do not knock over stones for evidence. Leave offerings or notes if that is your practice, and do not taunt what may be grieving. The people who come home from these places with stories often speak of regret more than triumph. The town clerks, the groundskeepers, the retired officers, their small, weary gestures tell a softer story than the web posts. These sites affect people in ways that ripple through communities. Those ripples are why towns sometimes close a gate permanently or post warnings online, why a family might cover a tomb and seal it for a decade.
In Hollowgate, a vault remained bolted and lit. At Mackenzie, locals discouraged the climb. In Blackwater, fishermen set their own rules for when to be on the water. The official responses vary, but they all share a common aim: to put distance between people and whatever it is the stones remember. I have more files, more testimony, more photographs that I couldn't fit here tonight. Names have been changed where requested, and every claim I've relayed is framed as reported or alleged for a reason. These cemeteries sit where they always have, as places of memory, of loss, and sometimes, apparently, of lingering hostility. If you find yourself near one after dark, heed the old, simple warning again. Do not go alone. Walk the edge. Leave a light on.